What's up, family? Welcome back to Unauthorized History. If you're new to my channel, I'm the official conscious dude, and please make sure you like this video as well as subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell so you'll always know when to upload. Alright, you guys, I'm in the works currently making another video, but one of the things I wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about today was about black codes specifically, and what we must do today in our society right now. Let's get into it.
But if you think the battle's won, think again. The fact is, for each one we reach, there's one we can't. And if we can't reach them, chances are nobody can, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
According to equaljusticeinitiative.org, after the Civil War, slavery persisted in the form of convict leasing, a system in which southern states leased prisoners to private railways, mines, and large plantations. While states profited it, prisoners earned no pay and faced inhumane, dangerous, and often deadly work conditions. Thousands of black people were forced into what authors have termed slavery by another name into the 1930s. The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1865, prohibited slavery and involuntary servitude, but explicitly exempted those convicted of crime. In response, Southern state legislators quickly passed black codes, new laws that explicitly applied only to black people and subjected them to criminal prosecution for offenses such as loitering, breaking curfew, vagrancy, having weapons, and not carrying proof of employment. Crafted to ensnare black people and return them to chains, these laws were effective. For the first time in U.S. history, many state penal systems held more black prisoners than white, all of whom could be leased for profit. For those of you who have been subscribed to my channel for a while, you may remember that I briefly covered this in my video on convict leasing. I'll place the link to that video right here. Most of the black codes that we know of today were primarily passed between 1865 and 1866. But did you know that black codes existed before the Civil War? Were you also aware that several northern states had them? In 1832, James Kent authored and published Commentaries on American Law, and to quote from a passage in this publication, he stated, "In most of the United States, there is a distinction in respect to political privileges between free white persons and free colored persons of African blood, and in no part of the country do the latter, in point of fact, participate equally with the whites in the exercise of civil and political rights. The African race are essentially a degraded caste of inferior rank and condition in society. Marriages between them and whites are forbidden in some of the states, and were not absolutely contrary to law, they are revolting and regarded as an offense against public decorum. By the revised statutes of Illinois, published in 1829, marriages between whites and Negroes or mulattoes are declared void, and the persons so married are liable to be whipped, fined, and imprisoned. By an old statute of Massachusetts in 1705, such marriages were declared void, and they are so still. A simpler statute provision exists in Virginia and North Carolina. Such connections in France and Germany constitute the degraded state of concubinage, which was known in the civil law. But they are not legal marriages because the parties want that equality of status or condition, which is essential to the contract." Fast forward to the Reconstruction era, and you see black Americans are flourishing. They not only owned businesses, but they were politicians, and there were several cities around the U.S. that were primarily made of black Americans with their own schools, hospitals, businesses, etc. It can be argued that due to this, black codes evolved into Jim Crow laws. Beginning in the 1870s, Jim Crow laws established definitive lines of segregation for black and white Americans. Schools, hospitals, public facilities, and transportation services barred black Americans from utilizing and sharing spaces with white Americans under the separate but equal doctrine. The historic Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were said to have abolished all remaining Jim Crow laws that existed. But did you know that the state of Mississippi had a provision in their constitution that essentially ensured that white Americans would have perpetual control of politics in that state? Let's take a look at this article from ABC News. In the article, it states, and I quote, "Mississippi just ditched its Confederate-themed state flag. Later this year, the state's voters will decide whether to dump a statewide election process that dates back to the Jim Crow era." Facing pressure from a lawsuit and the possibility of action from a federal judge, legislators are putting a state constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. The amendment would simplify elections for governor and other statewide officials by erasing an electoral college-type provision for Mississippi's 1890 Constitution, one that was written to dilute black voting power and maintain white control of state politics. Mississippi is the only state with such a system for state elections. If voters adopt the amendment, a statewide candidate receiving a majority of the popular vote would win. If nobody receives that in the race with at least 3 candidates, the top 2 would go to a runoff. Legislators' final action to put the amendment on the ballot happened Monday, a day after they took the historic votes to retire a 126-year-old state flag that was the last in the U.S. with the Confederate battle emblem. Amid widespread protest over racial injustice, Mississippi faced growing pressure to drop a symbol that's widely condemned as racist. A commission will design a new Mississippi flag without the rebel symbol and with the phrase, "In God We Trust." Voters will be asked to accept or reject the new flag November 3rd, the same day the amendment and the presidential race are on the ballot. End quote. Alright family, I know I provided you with a lot of information to unpack, but one of the things I want to make sure is we as a people need more than symbolism to create change and equality for us. We've seen them removing images such as Aunt Jemima from syrup bottles. We've seen them kneeling in fox kente cloth in Congress, which look very faked and staged if you ask me. We have even seen them spray paint Black Lives Matter on the street. But we need legislation that will actually promote racial equality. If ignorance is truly bliss, then how many other states still contain provisions in their constitutions that bar Black Americans from ever attaining equality, such as the provision in the Mississippi Constitution? If I can leave you with anything, I'll leave you with this. Continue the protestation until they pass more legislation. Do not be swayed by the removing of monuments and symbols, because all of that is just a smokescreen. Pressure needs to be applied to Congress to pass legislation that provides us as Black Americans the same opportunities, privileges, and rights that are afforded to white Americans and everybody else in the United States. Do not be swayed by acts such as police departments across the U.S. being defunded. There is nothing preventing them from reforming these police departments and continuing on with the brutalization of African American men and women. We need to push for black and white changes on paper to these laws that are currently in place. There's a saying that goes, history repeats itself, but what do I know? I'm just a guy that loves history. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content. Let me know how you feel about this video down in the comment section below. Alright, peace family.